Dear students, welcome back to the second teleconferencing session, which is in continuation with the earlier one pertaining to voluntary action in rural development. I go back to the statement which I made that capitalism has reformed, and I was saying that voluntary organizations and voluntary associations grow in a democratic society. Now, when I mean that capitalism has reformed, it doesn't mean that capitalism has stopped being exploitative or capitalism has not is no more exploitative. It is, but it has also simultaneously started devoting attention, maybe because of democratic compulsions and also the radical movements all over the world, which questioned its existence, that it has started giving enough attention to the development of the people, and a large number of resources, all industries, business houses and capitalism all over the world is devoting toward that end, because if there are peaceful democratic conditions, only then capitalism can survive and exist. It has also I learned this lesson hard way. So it's not, it doesn't mean, it need not be misconstrued that perhaps I am abandoning that stating, giving the, giving that the capitalism has become a very holy, or it has no intention for profit. It certainly has intention for profit, but as long as democratic democracies exist in a democracy, people have the right to ask more, question more, organize, come together, make association, and whereby there are also political associations which are actively in politics and do decide the fate of the people and all that, but where the voluntary sector basically is an area where people's struggles in a democratic fashion, contribute towards more and more development. Here lies the importance of this sector. And as I was saying that this knowledge of voluntary organizations is better, or role of these voluntary sector is why it's so better, because they have a first-hand and better knowledge of local needs, problems and resources. Now, since voluntary organizations can only grow in democratic societies, and let me say categorically that since the beginning of history till now, there's no other better institution or let's say or arrangement where societies can prosper and live better than democracy. Democratic institutions, broadly liberal and secular democratic societies, and their creation and these kind of institutions related to democracy is the epitome of all the development, and the salvation of mankind is through this route only. I mean, if you have to curb other negative tendencies in society, it should be, the solution is democracy, more democracy and more democracy, and it will ultimately come from people. If these conditions are there, there's absolutely nothing which can deter. It may take little more time, it can take more time, it can make more people's struggles, people's efforts, but theoretically, philosophically and constitutionally, the scope exists enough for the people to take action, and people though are there to, which are responding to it also, and the growth of voluntary sector over the last 60 years, it speaks volumes about how these phenomena are unfolding. It may be at a certain point, it may be some kind of cynical thinking to even say that there are basically exploitation of democratic institutions are also there. Many times a finger is raised towards politicians, political parties, or fake or false voluntary organizations which are not doing good work, only churning after money, making money and all that. These sort of phenomena is a part of the package. They do continue existing over there. They may be, there might be people who might be doing just, lip service to democracy in principles, but in actual they may not be implementing the fundamentals of These sort of aberrations are there, actually not devoting making concrete efforts to strengthen democracy or democratic institutions. Or there might be people engaged in voluntary sector which are doing lip service to their principles and but not actually engaged in making money. These sort of aberrations are part of the package, but they are not in society. These are not the reasons to be pessimistic, because once these phenomena and they unroll, all these sort of aberrations do creep in and take place, but ultimately they get exposed and they get defeated, and the real concrete people, their struggles, they are coming together, they are making associations, they are making non-governmental organization, and their good work earns them laurels, and they certainly do contribute and change the fate of societies. I am very positive, and we are very positive, and literature suggests, but when I say I doesn't mean I mean literature suggests sufficiently. If you walk through the paths of history, from the very beginning till the, now 21st century, beginning of 21st century, in fact certain number of centuries, if you walk through the history of democracy, conditions have improved and changes have occurred, and they have been better, progressive values, human values and people's concerns have come on the agenda of the various democratic states. And this people's actions all over the world, even small actions, small getting together, which are insignificant, small growth of small associations, to begin with in the Western countries, and then later on even other countries like India for the last 50-60 years. It's only because we adopted that constitution, which gives us the freedom, the right to freedom to make freedom of association, whereby people can come together and make association, can at their own, with their own free will, and take up and devote to the well-being of the society. This journey shows that we are towards in the right direction. That path is through democracy, more democracy, more democracy. That is only I want to underline. Whether it's capitalism, whether it's which was earlier a very inhuman, oppressive, exploitative force, it has changed its character to a greater extent and is reformed to a greater extent, and I am very positive that in future it will change more and more. There are already discussions emerging around corporate social responsibility, and where capitalism will be forced to more and more minimize its profits and devote more and more to the well-being of societies and all that. Democratic states, welfare state, the notion of welfare state, they all are proceeding towards that direction only. On the way, these aberrations should not dishearten, or should not should not be taken into a very in a negative way, that as if the whole historical movement is going to stop. Absolutely not. That direction, the die is cast. Democratic society will proceed into that direction only, and more countries, if all over the world, will find their salvation only through the democratic institutions. Now coming to because VOs have voluntary organization have first-hand and better knowledge of local needs, problems and resources. Since people are always in touch with these problems, they are formed by the people's initiatives, hence closer to the people, and commitment and zeal is stronger vis-a-vis rigid bureaucratic systems. Like I was saying that in this unit of block second, we have discussed voluntary agency administration and management. Thereby we have discussed how administration and management of voluntary organizations is different than the management and administration of business houses or corporate sector, or whether it's government bureaucracy. Fundamentals of administration remain the same, but there are certain kind of special requirements of voluntary agency administration which come into picture, that we had discussed in block 2 in the unit on voluntary agency administration and management, and that's why its commitment and zeal is stronger. to the people, because bureaucratic system, bureaucracy itself normally intends to and strives for status quo, maintaining status quo. That's the nature, that's the inbuilt nature of the bureaucratic system and administration. While voluntary agency administration is always sensitive to the needs of the people, proactive, and always understand the grassroots problem. And since springs from within the people, from their own will, with their own volition, and people come together. So this kind of understanding about society is radically different than the bureaucratic system. And this more responsive to the needs of the community. Voluntary organization, whole voluntary sector is generally more responsive to the needs of the community. It has greater operational flexibility because people discuss together, democratically they discuss, they take their decision democratically, there is no rigidity about it, and then they try to evolve over a period as the requirements change, or the needs of the people are changed, or the developmental needs change, particularly in rural areas. And these that's more grassroots level, more cost effective, since there is no elaborate bureaucratic structure. The other part is when state through planned developments generates or spends on development a large number of leakages down the line through bureaucracy. If you remember that earlier, the Rajiv Gandhi itself, being the Prime Minister at that time, late Shri Rajiv Gandhi, he had expressed this concern that out of 1 rupee, only 10 paisa ultimately reaches the people on the real development work, while other is getting absorbed into various kind of, leakages, whether it's corruption or whether, people taking up the money. So state resources are getting have an elaborate structure, and then this eats away the large number of funds, and the real needs of people are not met. While people, when organize and around locally and get together, and then they are concerned about, they are very much careful about wastage of money, and maximum of funds are being spent on the development work. No doubt, we cannot, a certain percentage we cannot rule out for the running the organization, whether office, buildings, other infrastructure, whatsoever required for an organization, but that remains a secondary priority. The main priority remains that much more and more funds must be spent on developmental work. So this kind, they don't have that kind of elaborate bureaucratic structure where kind of hurdles are there. So they try to minimize bureaucratic structure hurdles, and administration is more flexible, and people come together. And the VOs and NGOs, particularly this distinction, we have earlier also, in our earlier teleconferencing sessions, no doubt we have highlighted it few times, but in this context, you can recall that VOs are formed by the individual or groups, NGOs are initiated, sponsored and constituted by government as autonomous bodies for pursuing some specific development objective. The rules of NGOs are as per government directives that is registered under appropriate act and all that. Now, while voluntary organizations are, people form the rules and regulations and the system of administration. They come together and they themselves form that system of administration and rules and regulations. They may not be registered. Voluntary organizations have that option. They may be registered, if they opt for not to register, they may function without registration. The only underlying distinction is, if they are not registered, they will not be able to receive funds from the state. For receiving grants in aid and funds from the state, voluntary organization must get registered. This is the only distinction. This distinction is a theoretical distinction between VOs and NGOs. A large number of literature misses it, and large number of even scholars sometimes inadvertently continue using both as if they are exchangeable, they are synonymous. This is not the case. VOs have a different distinction, NGOs have a different distinction. As I said, NGOs are initiated, sponsored and constituted by government or by state as autonomous bodies. For, no doubt, they are autonomous, their autonomy is given, but they are constituted by the state for certain kind of development perspective or agenda in mind, or pursuing some specific development objective. And these rules are framed by the government directives, and they are certainly registered under appropriate act, while VOs need not be registered, but they come, VOs make their own rules and regulations, they make their own constitution, they frame their own with the collective will of the people. VOs generate their own funds or receive funds from donor agencies including NGOs. VOs normally generate their own funds, they can receive also from other NGOs, means government constituted in autonomous bodies, or they from donor agencies, maybe industrial houses, business houses and all that. NGOs receive funds from government and channel them to VOs for implementing programs, policies, programs, and their strategies are influenced by government directives. Government exercises some degree of control over NGOs. No doubt NGOs are given the status of autonomous bodies, but a certain kind of control by the government or the state is exercised on and the functioning of the NGOs. Basically, they are constituted for channelizing funds to the voluntary sector, or their programs and strategies are also within the ambit and within the parameters of the development perspective of the state. As in the beginning of the earlier session I said it, that perspective of state is normally very, very radically different than the, which comes from the people's perceptions and all that. So they will certainly, government will certainly try to stick within the parameters of its planned development agenda. And within that agenda only, it will it will expect that those NGOs, which no doubt it has given autonomous status, but they should function within those parameters. So in that sense, certain kind of controls are always exercised on NGOs, while VOs, if they receive state funds, they are to a certain extent are certainly liable to explain and give back, audit or other aspects of meeting audit requirements and all that, how the funds have been spent and all that. But deciding the development priorities, that's the freedom of the voluntary organizations. VOs formulate their own strategies and policies and programs. Voluntary organizations, when I say VOs, voluntary organizations form their own strategies, policies and programs. So independently, with the collective discussion of the people and its members involved in it, and democratically take decisions and decide the priorities of development, and then go ahead and spend the funds. They even may generate their own funds only with their own initiatives and can continue working independent of the state. There's no rule to stop them in a democracy. But if they are seeking certain kind of help and grants in it from the state, they certainly have to abide by certain kind of principle or certain kind of guidelines or the rules which come along with that grants in aid. Now, voluntary organizations have usually motivated and committed leadership, having desire to serve society. This is the central, very essential part of a voluntary organization, that when voluntary organization formed, people are committed for a cause. Their leadership is such that it has a desire to change society, serve society, to work in the service of the people. But NGOs depend on paid professional staff and have a hierarchical structure. Mostly NGOs are largely, again, have a structure like bureaucracies, and they depend on a professional staff, and a hierarchical structure is there. Let me here make little intervention that large voluntary organizations, as they grow large, from smaller to larger voluntary organizations which are working for years after years with the long-term developmental goals, they also tend to acquire similar hierarchical and bureaucratic structure, and they do also hire professional staff, various kind of trained, skilled manpower and professional staff. But a distinction must be made that voluntary organizations, since they are democratically run, they do prioritize their administrative innovations, needs, and they remain flexible, and then they more responsive to the needs of the people. They don't become, trying to acquire the characteristic like rigid, bureaucratic characteristic, adhering to status quo. They are more amenable to change. So this distinction remains. Many times in surface glossing, it may be argued that the large voluntary organizations also have professional staff, they have also salaried people working in, they have office staff, they have similar kind of structure, but the qualitative distinction always remains there. This has to be kept in, while NGOs, in the case of non-governmental organizations, they depend entirely more or less like they tend to take the shape of a bureaucratic structures. Another point, voluntary organizations can be both non-political or politically and ideologically oriented. NGOs are usually non-political in nature. Non-governmental organizations, since they are constituted by the state or the government, they are supposed to be non-political. This is the underlying factor. They cannot align with any kind of ideology or political formations and all that. They have to remain independent or autonomous, no doubt, but see all kind of people in society with the same standards and with the same parameters. While voluntary organizations have that kind of freedom, if they want to have kind of linkages with certain kind of political organization, or they may have certain kind of ideological orientation, if they think that vision is more suitable for development, they can adopt that sort of ideological vision, and they can, even if they want, most of them can remain non-political and only entirely can devote to the developmental work. That option remains with them. Next point, you have to keep this in. While this distinction is visible in literature, we have also pointed out repeatedly into our course materials that voluntary organizations can be activist organizations also. They can be simultaneously doing development work, while simultaneously they can be activist organizations. They can devote to advocacy, which can challenge and project against the established social and economic structures and institutions. So they can work. Voluntary organizations may not be solely devoted to pure developmental work. They may even mobilize people, can take what underlying principle is peaceful, non-violent action, not any violent action. The voluntary organizations have the freedom to struggle in society, to do advocacy through mobilizing people through peaceful, non-violent means to strive for their goal if they think that certain structures and institutions in society are not conducive to the development of people, for the well-being of the people. The people can mobilize, can make associations, can work toward that, and people can work for, question the social and economic structures of and institutions of the society, and made struggle to reform it, because democracy permits that scope for all kind of democratic struggles, and in that ambit also voluntary organizations can be also activist organizations. While NGOs work within the framework of the established social and economic structures, the NGOs, non-governmental organizations which are constituted by the state or the government, which are autonomous, they have a certain kind of rigid functional structure, so they can only work within the social and economic structures of the state outlined, and certain, because state exercises certain kind of control, and through that they can seek changes. Only through that route they can seek changes in the institutional framework, through a prescribed route. I mean, they cannot go very far away beyond that. No doubt they have the option to do good work, but that must fit within the policy framework of the state and the developmental agenda of the state. only they have that kind of permission. On the other hand, voluntary organizations, since they spring from within the society and they are formed with the free will of the people, people come together to form association with their own initiative. They generate their own, mostly on their own resources. They have every option and freedom to be activist organizations, mobilizing people for against the established or status quo, or changing the people, or changing the established social and economic structures and institutions. Now, there is another aspect of which factors affect people's participation. This is a very important aspect, and this to the extent to which programs are based on felt needs. Now, if the programs, a voluntary organization chalks out certain kind of development agenda which is structured, which is rooted in the felt needs of the people, the needs of the people at the grassroots level, that way more and more people will join together, more and more the voluntary organization will grow, its work will be appreciated. So this way people's participation increases, and motivation and leadership is very important. In voluntary organizations, the leadership has a vision and commitment and progressive, secular agenda of development, and democratic leadership recognize the principles of democracy and encourages people's participation. That sort of situation and contributes to the growth of voluntary organizations, and a voluntary organization more and more grows. And the other aspect is communication in a medium which people can understand. When you are working with the local people, their people should, the voluntary organizations working over there must understand the cultural nuances, cultural values of that society, the whole past cultural traditions, and try to struggle. Abrupt change people will not accept. So accepting the limitations over there, people should gradually, patiently, then strive towards doing development work within a particular cultural context. That becomes very important. In that sense, communication becomes very important. How to establish a very healthy communication with the people, so that people, people repose faith in the voluntary organization, its work, and people really feel that place their trust in the voluntary organization. Only this sort of communication with the people becomes so necessary, and the voluntary organization and its leadership must understand this cultural context, and then there is scope for the more mobilization, more participation of the people. And now there are a few certain factors which hinder people's participation also. These are that the local leadership is not motivated. If the local community is not prepared ahead of launching a program, suppose a voluntary organization enters into an area abruptly, as I said earlier, and starts doing certain kind of developmental work, the motive may be very genuine, it may be progressive, it may be everything. But if people misread it, and people are not taken into confidence, and the ground is not prepared beforehand, this may boomerang back to a particular voluntary organization. The work it will hinder people's participation. People will just start seeing with doubt. So taking people into confidence and preparing the ground, and then entering gradually into a community, and then starting the development work becomes very necessary. These sort of aspects now voluntary organizations are well, knowledgeable, and there's a whole lot of knowledge and all that. And more or less we have all various aspects we have discussed when we have written this course in the content materials, if learners read carefully. In fact, the contents are such that they will be well versed into various areas, how voluntary sector functions and how it works, particularly in rural areas. And factionalism, rural power structures and Western interests prevent people's participation. There are sometimes at local levels, there are various kind of, factional interests, caste-based interest, religion-based interest. There are different kind of, divisions within the society created by particularly certain kind of Western interests. So, voluntary organizations working at the rural areas have to be aware of that. Rural power structures are there. There are landed interests. There are landless laborers. There are agricultural laborers. There are people, poor people. So, when their interests are varied, and when the Western interests try to scuttle, when their positions are questioned, or they are, different, more basic progressive kind of values are introduced into society, and development work is done, howsoever genuine it may be, this gets lost within the, a certain kind of political maneuvers take place between the Western interests, create obstacles, various kind of obstacles, and that becomes sometimes a very hindering, or aspect, hindering aspect, or you can say it becomes an obstacle in the whole functioning of voluntary organizations. So these sort of nuances has to be kept in mind, and they have to be very carefully studied. The cultural context, the people, the power structure over there, how landed interests will many times have their own different kind of interests. Laborers they would like the status quo to exploit laborers, and or to not to do for something for their health or their income generating to increase their income generating potential. A voluntary organization abruptly land over there, and without understanding these contradictions in the society over there, in the local areas, in rural areas, this may be self-defeating for the voluntary organization or NGOs, because since these kind of this kind of a development work, sometimes it challenges the existing mechanisms of the social injustice and exploitation perpetrated on the people, and so the Western interests play different kind of games to obstacle it. These their stories are reported in many times in papers. There are many times of even violent attacks are being done on people working in the voluntary sector, and large number of people give various kind of sacrifices, but committed leadership with a moral authority, with over a period when the genuine work is done, gradually, carefully understanding the cultural metrics of a particular area, they succeed. It's not. These are certain kind of, factors which voluntary organization must keep in mind. In fact, there is a whole knowledge, as I said earlier also, over historically, voluntary sector has acquired a large corpus of knowledge to enter into the development work, and they know how to go by it step by step. These are cautions which the most of the voluntary organizations do take before and starting any development work in a particular, in rural areas or in remote areas. Bureaucracy is usually another hurdle, since many programs, voluntary actions imply erosion of their authority and status quo. As I said, bureaucracy has a tendency to keep status quo. If they basically would like to that things don't change, because change brings for more compulsions and more, it keeps them on tenterhooks to work for the development of the people. So any status quo, they will be willing to. System has that tendency. Unfortunately, this is inbuilt into it, that has a tendency to keep status quo, that things should not change. But once this is the greatest hurdle which voluntary organizations face. When voluntary organizations start working with the people, they start questioning the outmoded, or you can say unproductive or retrogressive notions of the bureaucracy or this planned development whatsoever. then this threatens the position of the bureaucracy. So bureaucracy itself, it becomes then a kind of a obstacle. But it doesn't mean the voluntary organizations or NGOs have faced all these have crossed historical to this, and it doesn't mean that they are deterred by this obstacles. These are various of obstacles which voluntary sector has faced and has crossed and is even facing, and has the knowledge and know-how and skills to counter that. Illiteracy, poverty and low level of awareness hinder people's participation. The other aspect is that since in rural areas, particularly in marginalized classes or in the lower castes or in people are poverty stricken, and there is a low level of awareness. So these are also compulsions which hinder the people's participation. Because if people don't have even bread and butter to fill their stomach, I mean they don't have 2 meals in a day, I mean it's very difficult to expect from them that they can contribute to something, to the voluntary participation in a voluntary organization. So the very basic condition basically which have emerged, this is another fundamental condition which we have discussed in when we have discussed the chapter is relationship with democracy. We have also discussed what kind of conditions we have argued over, we have explained over there, that this condition that people having time beyond their livelihood. Once people have time beyond their earning their routine and doing their routine work and earning their livelihood and certain of free time and labor, if they can contribute free time and labor or certain of resources, only then voluntary organization can take place, can grow, can emerge, otherwise not. This is again a modern condition in a democracy which is most lying at the root of the voluntary sector. So illiterate people with poverty and low level of awareness, they are unable to participate or form voluntary organizations. So this is another hindering factor for people's participation, because the basic condition is it's only when the people have certain of surplus time, labor or resources to give freely for voluntary action, for voluntary work, then only voluntary organization can take place, and that condition exists in modern economies. It has since that condition existed in modern economies, that's why voluntary sector has grown. Now, role of state, we have been coming many times in between. Development with social justice, promote and develop interests of the advantaged sections of the society. Now, the very notion of development with social justice, state remains committed to that. It is that fundamental tenet on which the direction is being set in democratic society. But certainly, when it comes, as I repeatedly said, state, no doubt, in principle, remains committed with toward the development of rural areas, rural people. Certainly, its agenda is also with that this development should be with social justice, and it should promote and develop interests of the disadvantaged sections of society. The voluntary sector has significantly increased strengthened this whole aspect, after independence. In the direction is the same, but the impetus comes from the more and more impetus has come from the people, and since theoretically that commitment exists with the democratic state, and there was enough scope in the society where people could come together and work further. Now, as I had earlier explained these broader contour of the contents of the 2 blocks of this course. In the third block we have made in the first unit we have given a critical appraisal of the historical past of the voluntary sector. Then we have come to, in the second unit, the nature and types of voluntary organizations in rural India, working particularly in rural development. So what kind of voluntary organization. To begin with, in this unit we have explained various kind of distinctions in various kind of voluntary organizations, and then in the Indian context we have shown which type of voluntary organizations are engaged in the rural development. In the third unit of the third block, broadly we have discussed what type of problems are faced by the voluntary organizations while working in rural areas. There is a large number of problems, obstacles, cultural, political, even resources, and but the main even underlying is resources. Resource mobilization is the greatest problem. There are large number of problems faced by the voluntary sector while working in rural areas. This we have discussed in detail in the unit 3 of the block 3. And now the interesting part is, when we come to a unit 4, we have brought the discussion to on a topic which is very interesting, that is that how voluntary organization and rural development are presently at a crossroads. In that, the main aim of this unit is to explain that voluntary through 60 years they have grown and they have set certain kind of development agenda. State had another development agenda of where the voluntary sector has reached. Now whether it has reached a certain point where it needs to radically revise its priorities in development. And this discussion is very interesting and very fruitful if the learner will, I'll not enter into details at present, but certainly in the coming teleconferencing sessions, and we may take up as topic-wise, specific topic-wise also discussions, where we will explain to you more. And I'll just, since time will be just coming short, finishing at present for this session, I'll just broadly reflect on the contours of the last block of this course, that's block 4, where the name of the block is Role and Experiences in Rural Development. You might have received the materials. In unit 1, we have discussed the state-assisted NGOs and rural development. Now this is a fundamental distinction. There are a large number of NGOs which are assisted and promoted by Indian state. Since Indian state after independence from the very beginning had its own development agenda and has remained engaged in development, so over a period it has its 5-year plans, no doubt, but simultaneously it has created large number of state assistance and promoted NGO sector and for the purposes of rural development. Counterposed to that, in the second unit, we have brought the community-based organizations and rural development. There are large number of CBOs, community-based organization. That concept is very different than voluntary organization, than NGOs. Community-based organizations have a very different character. They have a specific characteristics. If you read this unit, you will find out that how they are different, how they are engaged in the community work. And in the second unit of last block, we have discussed this the characteristics of community-based organizations. And in the unit 3 of this block, last block, we have discussed some successful experiences, some very you can say prominently, because in this kind of a limitation, in this kind of material, we cannot discuss. There are a large number of successful experiences, but some prominent experiences we have discussed in this unit, where people, like Anna Hazare's or even Talonia, then this watershed development of Rajendra Singh and in Rajasthan. These kind of experiences what we have discussed in this unit. In the last unit, since globalization is taking place all over the world and for the last some period, and it is coming into picture, there is no escape from that. So global voluntary effort and rural development, we have concluded the course contents with that. That's another very interesting area where you will find that how in the context of our international and global voluntary organization, NGOs are taking interest in the rural development in India. That's another particular area where we have wound up this context. In the coming teleconferencing sessions, we may take up some specific topic-wise discussions also. So here at this stage we will stop this session, and thank you very much being with us. And I request also that some sort of questions students must ask if they are attending over there. Thank you very much.